Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a deeply chilling coastal legend. It all kicks off with this incredibly picturesque village and a terrifying, totally unexplainable sound. We're going to unpack a story that perfectly blends folklore, horror, and honestly, a massive twist about human perception. It's just a fascinating look at how myths are born directly out of tragedy and fear. So picture this. You're walking near a cursed pond in the absolute dead of night. The air is incredibly thick, the moon is totally hidden, and out of nowhere, you hear it. The faint, chilling sound of anklets just echoing in the dark. Chun, chun, chun. Yeah, it's exactly the kind of sound that immediately makes your blood run cold, right? It's that immediate signal that you are definitely no longer alone. And honestly, that very sound is the absolute heartbeat of the legend we're exploring today. Let's jump right into Section 1, the village of Shiulidanga, a picturesque town with a dark secret. You see, before all the horror, Shiulidanga was this really peaceful seaside village. Just imagine lush green paddy fields, rows of coconut trees, the morning mist rolling in, and that calming, distant roar of the sea. You'd hear ducks quacking, kids laughing, smell the evening incense, the whole shebang. But right at its absolute edge stood this massive, ancient banyan tree beside a pond. And let me tell you, every single local avoided this spot at all costs. Why? Well, because once night fell, these horrifying omens would appear, basically turning the whole serene landscape into a total nightmare. You'd hear distant cries drifting on the wind, or this sudden super aggressive knocking on doors. Then the village dogs would start howling in perfect, eerie unison. A thick smell of rotten water would just spread everywhere. And the pond water, it would literally begin to tremble violently for absolutely no reason. But here is the most terrifying detail. Anyone who actually walked past that tree at night was found dead by morning, their faces frozen in absolute, unimaginable terror. So naturally, fear completely paralyzed the village. Once the sun went down, nobody dared to step outside. Moving on to Section 2, the first sight of horror, the woman in the rain. Okay, so moving from just rumors to the very first confirmed encounter. This actually happened to a woman who was walking home on a violently stormy night. The sky was pitch black, literally only lit up by these brief flashes of lightning. And as she's hurrying home, she hears that dreadful sound, trun, trun, trun. But then, the sound actually changes. Right behind her, in the thick mud, she starts hearing these heavy footsteps. Hun, hun, hun. You can imagine her heart just turned to ice. She slowly turned around to face whatever was stalking her in the dark. And when she turned, she saw this completely nightmarish figure standing right there among the tangled, hanging roots of the banyan tree. It was a woman in a white saree. She had long, wet hair just dripping onto the soil, and completely white, soulless eyes. And, super creepily, this thick black water was slowly dripping from the corners of her lips. I mean, it is the absolute quintessential image of a vengeful spirit. And to make matters even worse, and this is a classic, terrifying hallmark of folklore demons, by the way, her feet were twisted entirely backwards. The figure just floated toward her. The poor villager tried to run in terror, but something grabbed her saree, just pulling her straight down into the mud. She felt an ice-cold hand wrap right around her neck, and when she looked up, that stark white face was literally inches from hers. She was knocked unconscious instantly. And get this, when she was finally rescued the next morning, her hair had turned partially white just from the pure shock of the whole encounter. After that, the village was absolutely certain. Without a doubt, a demonic entity had claimed the banyan tree. Which brings us to Section 3, the child in the dark, a midnight encounter. So this terrifying status quo basically held up until one highly pivotal moment. Like we said, the entire village was 100% convinced a demoness lived there. That is, until a small boy named Aaron woke up and wandered out to the pond on a pitch-black new moon night. Aaron heard the anklets, but then the pond literally exploded. And what emerged from the depths wasn't the woman in white at all, but this massive, ancient, chimera-like monster. Just look at these features for a second. It had a crocodile's body for moving through the water, a tiger's face, thick crab-like armor for skin, and eyes that were literally burning with glowing red fire. It turned out to be an ancient, cursed demon of the deep.
Now for Section 4, the truth revealed, the savior in white.
This beast charged straight at little Aaron. But right as the monster was about to strike, the woman in the white saree materialized out of nowhere. Now, the villagers had rushed out with torches, fully expecting her to be the killer, right? But instead, they found her radiating this massive divine glow, and she was actually forcing the horrific monster back into the pond to save the child. When the trembling village head finally managed to ask who she was, she dropped a massive twist. She revealed she wasn't a demoness at all. She was actually a daughter of their very own village. Long ago, that monstrous chimera had killed her husband and her child, and she had died trying to save them. But being a fierce devotee of Lord Shiva, her soul just refused to leave. She was the one protecting the villagers who wandered too close. And those horrifying expressions on the victims' faces from the earlier rumors, yeah, they weren't reacting to her at all. They were reacting to the monster right before she could save them. Crazy, right?
All right, Section 5, the final tantric battle, purging the cursed demon.
So, finally knowing the true enemy, the village prepared for all-out war. To destroy this ancient, armored beast, they knew tears weren't going to cut it. They needed action. The villagers actually brought in Trilochan Acharya, who was this highly powerful tantric priest from Kaliganj, completely setting the stage for an epic supernatural showdown. As dusk fell, the sky turned blood red, and the priest began his chanting. The monster, obviously sensing the magic, just exploded from the pond in a complete rage. But this time, the villagers didn't run. Working totally together, they physically dragged these heavy nets into the water, pulling with all their might against the beast. All the while, the glowing goddess stood right beside them, using her divine power to restrain the creature. It was this brutal, hours-long struggle of mortals and spirits teaming up against an ancient curse. And then, right as lightning struck the sky, this blinding white light descended directly from the banyan tree. It was a literal blessing from Lord Shiva himself. The light merged with the goddess. Her eyes burned like fire, and she actually rose up into the air. She fired this intense beam of pure white light that struck the demon's chest like a thunderbolt. The creature screamed, burned, and finally turned entirely to ashes, just dissolving harmlessly right back into the pond water. And our final section, Section 6, a divine protector lingers, from fear to devotion. Almost immediately, that terrible smell of decay vanished, and the trembling water finally calmed down. Realizing she was never a ghost, but actually a divine protector all along, the villagers placed a Shiva idol right under the banyan tree in her honor, and they started daily prayers there. And even today, the villagers believe that sometimes, if you listen closely, carried on the night wind, you can still hear that familiar sound. Jun, Jun, Jun. But the beautiful part is, they no longer run in terror. They just smile, knowing their protector is watching over them. It really leaves us with a fascinating takeaway to reflect on. What if the things we fear most in the dark, the things we misunderstand, and immediately label as monsters, what if they are actually the very forces fighting to protect us? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.